I'm 52 and happily married. Here is what I learned. I can be a little smug at times when I talk about relationships, especially when I throw out phrases like, "He's not that into you." But to be completely honest, I've earned that smugness. The truth is, I've had my share of disappointments, heartbreaks, and lessons learned the hard way. But I also learned that sometimes the journey to finding the right person is messy. And while it can be painful, it makes you appreciate the right relationship when it finally comes. Let me take you back to my early 20s. I had a boyfriend, my first serious one, and we were together for 4 years. We lived together, we shared a life, or so I thought. But he made it pretty clear early on that he wasn't interested in marriage. I remember him joking in Spanish, my mother tongue, that the word for girlfriend and bride was the same, novia. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But looking back, I can see it was his way of downplaying marriage altogether. He'd roll his eyes when someone got married, or when we went to a wedding, he'd dramatically wince if someone caught the bouquet. He was the kind of guy who'd call marriage boring. And after a while, I started to think maybe he was right. I loved him though, or at least I thought I did. But life has a funny way of showing you the truth. After we broke up, he left me actually, and met someone else just 6 weeks later. I found out that marriage wasn't even on his radar. He married that woman a couple of years later. The whole thing was like a cruel joke. I was devastated, of course, but looking back, I was more in love with the idea of love than with the actual person. I should have seen the warning signs earlier, but I couldn't admit it at the time. I was too busy justifying his behavior, trying to make it work, trying to believe that one day he would come around. But he didn't. By the time I was in my late 20s, I swore off relationships for good, but then, of course, life had a different plan for me. I met my first husband, and we hit it off fast. He was charming, we had great chemistry, and it felt right. After 4 years together, we lived together, and finally, after countless arguments and long talks, we were engaged. It wasn't exactly a fairy tale proposal, though. He bought the ring after I gave him an ultimatum and handed it to me outside the jewelry store, with little to no fanfare. I remember trying to convince myself that it was perfect, that this was us. I was so desperate to justify the lack of romance, trying to make it seem like it was special in its own way. Cringe, right? But I genuinely believed it. Our marriage lasted 5 years. In hindsight, I see now that I was trying to make something work that was doomed from the start. He was a man who took me for granted, and that didn't change after we got married. If anything, it got worse. I had believed that things would change after the vows, that maybe he'd step up, but that wasn't the case. It turns out, if a man doesn't prioritize you while dating, he's not going to prioritize you in marriage either. Our divorce was messy, full of animosity and bitterness. He tried to take me for everything I had, and honestly, it felt like a betrayal. Zsa Zsa Gabor once said, "You never truly know a man until you divorce him." And let me tell you, those words couldn't be more true. By the time I hit my early 40s, I was done with love. I had sworn off marriage for good. I didn't need a man to complete me, and I wasn't interested in going down that road again. But fate had a different plan. I met my now husband, and I can honestly say he's the one who taught me what real love feels like. We met at work. We were on the same project team, sitting across from each other for 6 months before anything clicked. But when it did, it was different. It felt easy. We moved in together quickly, and everything just flowed. We didn't need to work at it, it came naturally. We spent all our time together, driving to work together, having lunch together, enjoying each other's company every single day. We knew we wanted to get married almost immediately. There was no dragging our feet, no hesitation, just mutual excitement. About 8 months into our relationship, we decided to get engaged. We went to Vienna to see an old friend of mine who is a jeweler, and we had her design the ring. We planned to get engaged on our first anniversary, and true to our style, it was simple but unforgettable. He booked a room at the Shangri-La Hotel in London with views that took my breath away, and there, with the city lit up around us, he proposed. Even though I knew it was coming, I cried. I had never felt so certain of something in my life. And even though I knew the proposal was coming, it still felt surreal. We eloped to Las Vegas. No fancy ceremony, no big white dress, just us, a few friends, and the kind of wedding that felt right for us. That was 8 years ago, and I still look back at it as one of the best decisions I've ever made. My husband is my soulmate. He's the most amazing guy I could have ever asked for. He is my biggest cheerleader, and he truly partners with me in every way. We've never had a fight. Not once. I never thought it was possible, but he makes it so easy. So when I look back at all the men who weren't that into me, the ones who didn't prioritize me, who took me for granted, or who left me wondering if I was enough, I realize how far I've come. I wish someone had told me years ago that I deserved better, that I shouldn't settle for less than what I truly wanted. But I had to learn that lesson the hard way. The right relationship doesn't require all the work, all the stress, or the endless justifications. It's easy, it's natural, and it makes you feel like you're enough, without needing to prove anything. Now, I feel smug, yes, but it's the smugness that comes from knowing what real love feels like, the kind that doesn't require changing who you are or pretending things are something they aren't. It's the love that says, I choose you, and I will choose you every day for the rest of my life.